There are hundreds of different cultures and traditions around the world, many of which, unfortunately, have already been lost or forgotten over the millennia, like a large part of ancient Egyptian civilization, for example. However, thanks to historians and archaeologists, we have found incredible evidence of some practices that ancient Egyptians used to follow in the past, practices that seem extremely bizarre to our modern eyes. And that is exactly what we are going to explore here today. A deeply bizarre and frightening practice of the ancient Egyptians confused historians and archaeologists for centuries, who initially believed they had found evidence of alien life in the excavations. These extremely elongated skulls, which appear to belong to extraterrestrials, are actually 100% human, and they did not become elongated by chance. In fact, the parents of elite babies made a great effort to shape their children's skulls, using cloth or other materials to direct the skull growth toward the upper extremity. These skulls were a symbol of the highest beauty, status, and privileged position in ancient Egyptian society. Nowadays, it seems absurd that people could commit this kind of atrocity just to distinguish themselves from the poor. Unfortunately, Egypt's ancient elite tried so hard that the evidence has lasted to this day. Both men and women in ancient Egypt wore very heavy eye makeup, which these days might be associated with a Gothic style featuring a very deep and defined black eyeliner, known even today as kohl or kajal. This type of makeup has persisted throughout the ages. But for the Egyptians, it was not just an aesthetic matter as it is for most of us today. The Egyptians believed that applying kohl not only enhanced their appearance, but also provided protection against evil spirits and eye infections. Minerals were crushed into powder and then mixed with water or other solvents, which could crystallize again into an applicator or be applied directly to the skin with a brush. The dark, bold lines drawn around the eyes were considered a way to ward off malevolent forces and bring good luck. Moreover, kohl also had practical benefits, as it helped protect the eyes from the intense glare of the sun and prevented eye infections by acting as a natural antibacterial agent. These days, getting a contraceptive is very simple. You just walk to the nearest pharmacy, or even easier, use a delivery app to summon the medication directly to your door, as if by magic. Women in ancient Egypt faced many more obstacles to get contraceptives, and believe it or not, they even involved using crocodile dung in their private parts to prevent conception. They mixed the dung with honey, and this mixture, as absurd as it may seem, actually worked because of certain spermicidal properties found in crocodile dung. Though it sounds extremely disgusting today, and it might be repulsive just to talk about this contraceptive method, the ancient Egyptians truly believed it was an effective solution. In reality, given the medical understanding of the time, there was not much else to be done besides exploring natural substances for birth control. A rather curious fact, which may be hard to believe, but actually happened in this ancient civilization of the Egyptians, was the construction of bathrooms for people to do their business. You might be wondering what is so abnormal about using bathrooms. After all, these days, it is completely normal in many modern societies. Almost every house has at least one bathroom or latrine for people to relieve themselves. But the issue is that these bathrooms we are talking about were built inside the tombs for the dead. That is because the ancient Egyptians believed that people basically continued to live even after they died, but in a spiritual plane. Unlike our beliefs, which completely separate the spiritual body from the physical body, the Egyptians did not make this distinction, believing that people would still need to use the bathroom even after dying. They were buried, in fact, with their belongings, which they might want to use in the afterlife. An extremely bizarre practice, which today is seen as anti-angiogenic, was used by the ancient Egyptians, applying bread full of mold and rot to people's wounds as a form of folk medicine. Strangely enough, this repulsive remedy was actually very efficient, truly helping wounds to heal. In fact, you might not know that the discovery of one of the most important drugs in human history, penicillin, happened in quite a similar way. The fungus penicillium, from which penicillin was extracted, can combat and even completely eliminate various bacteria bacteria and infections, such as syphilis, gas gangrene, meningitis, endocarditis, and many others, becoming the first antibiotic in history. Therefore, the Egyptians were probably millennia ahead in medicine compared to the rest of the world, which did not have such a distinctive use for moldy, rotten bread, also caused by fungi. Although ancient Egypt is often used as an example by historians and sociologists when discussing gender equality, one particular case stands out, generating controversy. Apparently, a famous ruler, specifically a female pharaoh from the 18th Egyptian dynasty named Hatshepsut, wore a fake beard. Even though ancient Egypt is known as a country that was not sexist, that is, they did not assign greater or lesser value to individuals based on their gender, Hatshepsut faced some form of discrimination that led her to adopt this strange facial accessory, mimicking the beards of male rulers. Some say Hatshepsut was widely respected by the Egyptian people, and that this facial accessory had nothing to do with gender issues. However, historians still have not reached a consensus on this topic. Perhaps we will never know the truth behind this odd custom displayed by the female pharaoh. You may have heard that the ancient Egyptians worshipped cats. Although this curious fact is not entirely wrong, it can lead to the incorrect assumption that cats were superior animals to the population of that time. In reality, the Egyptians had a deep relationship with various other animals, and their worship was far more complex than simply revering cats. In their culture, the Egyptian people attributed divinity to several other species, such as dogs, jackals, scarabs, and crocodiles. Of course, some animals and gods end up being more remembered. In Greek mythology, for example, Hestia, the goddess of the home and the hearth, is not as well known today, overshadowed by more powerful figures like Zeus and Poseidon. However, in Egypt, the goddess Bastet, responsible for fertility, is everywhere, since fertility in the desert was much more important than in Greece, which was surrounded by the ocean. These days, with advances in technology and medicine, it is not uncommon to see people with tattoos all over their bodies. You do not have to be a millionaire or part of some social elite to cover your skin with colorful designs. But believe it or not, before the invention of electricity, the Egyptians were already conducting tattoo rituals on certain selected individuals. A few years ago, archaeologists discovered mummies with tattoos, as well as images of living women bearing tattoos in the form of dots and spirals on their chest, abdomen, and thighs. Many historians believe that these marks, due to their location, were associated with a request for protection and blessing from the gods during pregnancy. The process of making a tattoo also had a special significance. It was considered ritualistic, starting with the creation of the brush itself, made of needles. This brush was then dipped in charcoal soot before being inserted into the skin to create the designs. You do not have to be an expert in ancient civilizations to know that the ancient Egyptians used to mummify their dead. Many famous movies have made it to the big screen, such as the iconic The Mummy from 1999, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, which portrayed a horror comedy story of fighting a terrifying undead creature. Of course, this film is quite fantastical, but it illustrates some points about the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians well. One of those is that the dead, in fact, remain alive even after their death. But did you know that the ancient Egyptians did not only mummify human beings, but also various animals like cats, dogs, birds, and even crocodiles? These animal mummies were often considered offerings to the gods, representing a form of reverence and devotion. Animals held significant religious and symbolic importance in the culture of ancient Egypt, and mummifying them was a way to honor them and ensure their eternal presence in the afterlife. By now, you probably know that the Egyptians had a lot of interaction with animals, especially cats. But did you know that they were also quite fond of monkeys, specifically baboons, which were trained to catch criminals, acting like genuine police in ancient Egypt? Among the classic hieroglyphs and works of art found by archaeologists, there is a fragment called Old Kingdom from the 5th dynasty, dating from around 2498 to 2345 before Christ. This fragment depicts baboons capturing thieves or other criminals, biting and holding them by their legs. According to historians, the ancient Egyptians kept baboons on leashes, which they would unleash upon the approach of criminals if necessary, as a security measure to restrain them, aiding the police in their capture. Besides assisting the police, these animals were also trained to harvest fruit and to dance. They were widely revered in Egyptian culture. Maybe you do not fully appreciate how convenient it is to be able to use a toothbrush and industrialized toothpaste today. If you had been born a few millennia ago, your reality would have been quite different. To keep their breath fresh and maintain oral health, the ancient Egyptians used pumice stone to grind the ashes of ox hooves and burned eggshells into a powder. They would then apply this powder to their teeth and gums to protect their mouths from hygiene problems. Perhaps putting these substances in your mouth seems pretty disgusting and unhygienic, but in reality, this odd method appears to have been quite efficient, at least in terms of mechanical cleaning, since the grit helped remove food debris no matter how small. In other situations, the Egyptians also used a combination of pepper, flowers, and coarse salt for their daily tooth cleaning. That mixture provided more freshness and a more pleasant smell, but it was not as effective in terms of cleaning. Imagine having to choose between clean teeth or a good-smelling breath. Today, life is so much easier. The origins of skincare practiced by millions of people around the world may lie in a very obscure and somewhat bizarre custom from ancient Egypt, where some wealthy, high-status individuals bathed in sour milk to improve their skin's condition. And that milk did not come from cows, but from female donkeys, which made the resource even more precious, since donkeys produce less milk than cows. A famous Egyptian who used to bathe in sour donkey milk every day was Cleopatra, who, according to evidence, owned more than 7,000 donkeys to fill her bathtub. Today, we know that sour milk contains lactic acid, which, when it comes into contact with the skin, helps exfoliate, removing unwanted layers so that new skin cells, more evenly pigmented, can form and take their place. Just as many people nowadays strongly believe in the power of visualization, that focusing on something for a long time or with great intensity could turn it into reality, a famous pharaoh named Tutankhamun might have taken his bizarre habit a bit too far by stepping daily on the faces of his enemies. Calm down, he did not go so far as to make sandals out of human remains. At least the act of stepping on enemies was a symbolic daily practice when he was not waging war. At least 80 pairs of shoes were found in Tutankhamun's tomb, some of them featuring images even on the soles, depicting Africans and Asians. In this way, the pharaoh, even when he was not at war defeating his enemies, could enjoy the feeling of literally stepping on them, something that might be viewed with great horror by people today. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.